speech.
Allow mass killing to become part of everyday reality in Syria. As the Secretary General has clearly explained, the crisis is escalating. The violence is getting worse. The abuses are continuing. The country is becoming more polarized and more radicalized. And Syria's immediate neighbors are increasingly worried about the threat of spillover. 9 days ago, I met President Assad in Damascus. I told him that the six-point plan is not being implemented as it must. I strongly urged him to take bold and visible steps to now radically change his military posture and honor his commitments to the six-point plan. I urged him to make a strategic decision to change his path. I also made clear that his government must work with my mediation effort on behalf of both organizations that I represent. President Assad believed that the main obstacle was the actions of militants. Clearly, all parties must cease violence, but equally clearly, the first responsibility lies with the government. Since then, shelling of cities has intensified. Government-backed militia seem to have free rein with appalling consequences. Yes, some detainees have been released, and agreement has been reached on the modalities for humanitarian assistance. But the hour demands much more. And President Assad has not indicated a change of course in his recent address to the National Assembly. Despite the fear and violence, ordinary people continue to make their voice heard in protests in the streets. Armed opposition groups have stated that they see no reason to respect cessation of hostilities. They have intensified their attacks, which will not serve the cause of the Syrian people. And the situation is made more complex and deadly by a series of bombings, some of which are indicative of the presence of a third actor. If things do not change, the future is likely to be one of brutal repression, massacres, sectarian violence, and even all-out civil war. All Syrians will lose.
The German Chancellor is urging Eurozone countries to embrace a closer political union as a cure to Europe's financial woes. In an interview on national TV, Angela Merkel said this could well mean a two-speed approach with some countries integrated faster than others. Germany is the Eurozone's economic engine, so it really does have a critical role to play in solving Europe's debt crisis. CNN's Paula Newton explains why.
The next 2 weeks will be critical for the EU's future, with Germany taking a pivotal role, and here's why. Germany may be the Eurozone's economic powerhouse. Its pockets are deep, but they're fraying. Germany's central bank, the Bundesbank, is already on the hook for at least $800 billion of peripheral country debt. Now that's about a quarter of German GDP. This can't just be about Germany bankrolling bailouts. Everyone is saying they need a deeper, more integrated EU. Everyone, of course, except for European politicians. Now, the marriage analogy here might be cliche, but it so aptly describes the EU. Married in name only. They have yet to consummate this thing. Now, what would that take? Well, first, politically, they would have to take a big step to smooth out the economic bumps in weaker countries like Greece, Spain, and Portugal. They're nursing recessions, high unemployment, and some are now suggesting that austerity has actually been self-defeating and responsible for triggering those recessions. Now, that would mean committing to a more federal system that in an orderly way makes transfer payments, a lot of those transfer payments coming from countries like Germany, those transfer payments going from strong countries to weaker ones whenever necessary. This may seem like Germany is committing to footing the bill with absolutely no payback, but the risk of contagion is real, and here's why. And this is just one measure. If Spanish banks fail, German banks remain the most exposed. I mean, look at this. Germany taking on 10%. The pressure for Germany and others to fully commit to Europe in every way is strong and blunt. And many, like hedge fund billionaire George Soros, are saying, look, this is the warning. You have little time and little room for debate now. Pauline in CNN, London.
We now take our second break. Stay tuned.
What's your AfriCell number?
773.
What's your mobile number?
735.
What's your AfriCell number?
746.
What's your number?
My number is 215. 2?
You mean 72?
No, it's 2, and I am AfriCell 2.
AfriCell 2? Hey, hey!
Yes, 2 is AfriCell 2.
Hey, hey!
AfriCell introduces the new AfriCell series, the number 2.
Welcoming the number 2 to the AfriCell family.
From now on, the AfriCell lines will not only start with the number 7, but also with the number 2.
Get a new AfriCell SIM card now that starts with the number 2.
So now I can get an AfriCell number that starts with the number 2?
Yes, and when you receive a call from a number starting with the number 2, it's one of the new AfriCell lines calling you. My mobile number is 2, and
we are AfriCell 2!
Welcome back. European football is focusing attention on the opening round of the 2012 Euro Football Championship in Poland and Ukraine. The build-up to the game is been marked by fear of racism in the tournament. Many, including former England defender Sol Campbell, have voiced fears of violent attacks by neo-Nazis and ultras. While UEFA President Michel Platini is suggesting that referees can stop the game in the event of racial incident in the tournament. We have more on what the UEFA chief has to say and news on the death of Villarreal's soon-to-be coach.
Rafael Nadal remains on course for a record 7th title at Roland Garros. He eased past fellow Spaniard Nicolas Almagro in straight sets. The number 2 seed did need a tie-break in the first set, but took the next 2 6-2, 6-3 to claim his 50th win on the Paris clay, having lost just once in 8 tournaments there. Next up for Nadal is David Ferrer. He had a tougher battle against the world number 4 Andy Murray. It went to 4 sets with Murray left to rue 59 unforced errors in the match. Despite his pedigree on the clay, though, it's the first time that Ferrer's made it through to the semi-finals at the French Open. Well, on some football news, and Euro 2012 kicks off on Friday, and the UEFA President Michel Platini says that any players who walk off the pitch during the tournament due to racial abuse will be booked. Manchester City and Italy striker Mario Balotelli has threatened to walk off the pitch if he's the victim of abuse. But speaking ahead of the start of the competition, Platini has said it's the referees, not the players, who are in charge of dealing with racist incidents on the pitch. He says it's the referee who takes these decisions. Referees can finish the game. They have the power in cases of racism. That is, I think, the best way to protect the game against racism. The referee has been given advice, and he can stop the game if there are any problems. There's been some tragic football news from overnight. The former Sporting Gijón coach Manuel Preciado has died of a heart attack just 24 hours after being appointed manager of Spanish side Villarreal. The 54-year-old had just agreed to take over at the second division club for next season after being out of work since leaving Gijón in January. A Villarreal club statement says Villarreal want to express their deepest sorrow at the sad loss and want to offer their condolences to his family and all his relatives.
And before we go, a reminder of our headlines. The Ivory Coast-based Pan-African Female Youth Movement for Peace has rewarded President Jammeh's peace-building strides with the 2012 Golden Palm Africa for Peace Award. State House has announced the formation of another commission mandated to identify tax evaders who escaped the first one. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has called for the phased political integration of Eurozone countries to counter Europe's mounting economic problems. And at least 78 people have been reportedly killed in the Syrian town of Qubir against the backdrop of renewed efforts